Yo, it's the Iron Sun. Figured I'd say a couple of things. This is just a new video. Title of the video is Nobody Wants You Until Somebody Wants You. Uh, I don't really make a lot of stuff because I don't really have all that much to talk about at the moment. But there's some new stuff. There's some new, in light of new statistics, things that are going on in the West, specifically with males and just the whole gender war nonsense. I figured I'd throw in my 2 cents on what I think. So let me see if I can pull up the stats and just read it off of it directly. Hold on. Let me do a little quick Google search. Bam. All right. I don't know how reliable this is, but I'm going to use it. Um, so in this one, it comes from the Hill. It says most young men are single, most young women are not. Um, let's see. So more than 60% of young men are single, nearly twice the rate of unattached young women, signaling a larger breakdown in social, romantic, and social sexual life of the American male. Men in their 20s are more likely than women in their 20s to be romantically, sexually lonely. They vanguard of an epidemic of declining marriage, sexuality, relations that affects all of young America. So let's see. So we're in a crisis of connection, said Niobe Way, a psychology professor and founder of the project of the advancement of our common humanity at New York University. Um, yeah, so there's a lot more there, but that's pretty much the gist of it. Um, so I wanted to bring up the topic of loneliness, suffering, and how it is affecting people, particularly men, but also how it's affecting just the world in general, and provide ideas that I've come up with just in light of my own, um, uh, with my own experience and what I'm starting to recognize. And if someone recognizes something different, then they can throw out other things. So to make it more of a collaboration, just a collaboration of thought. So the title kind of talks about the whole idea that a lot of times, since the world uh, is very shallow and most people are looking towards very surface level things just because of how egotistical, our whole goals seem to be. Like the world is very egoic, so we only look on the surface of things for the most part. So it also talks about the dynamic of males and females and how in the dating arena, especially, you're not really a prospect until someone else sees you as a prospect, and then someone else will see you as someone else, and then that kind of like creates the momentum. So if I had to make a analogy similar to how a boxer will be able to get more fights with other boxers if that boxer is has had fights already, right? If the boxer hasn't had any fights, then no one's gonna want to risk fighting with that boxer, and it's gonna make it harder for that boxer to make their name known. Um, I think the crisis in the modern day is twofold. We have a crisis of a dependence on technology, but then a crisis of separation and loneliness, and that leads to depression, even more suffering than what we're uh, maybe even more than what we're accustomed to. Um, Obviously, my opinions really haven't changed all that much. Um, if you're on my channel and you listen to my content, you pretty much know what I think already. Um, Now, some people could use these statistics as an opportunity to get on their soapbox and say, "Oh, poor me, woe was me. I guess the world hates me and stuff like that." Here's the thing: it's not really, it won't really do all that much. One, especially if you're trying to make men out to be the victims, because the world's not really all that. Um, the world doesn't really see men as this thing to protect, and so that's not really. Even if you wanted to take that route, it wouldn't work anyway. Um, but a couple of the solutions that I can at least throw out that I see as relevant for the individual person, um, let alone a man. The individual, as an individual, whenever you're at a place where you are alone and you're trying to figure yourself out, I think finding a way to suffer is, and I've said this before, finding a way to suffer that doesn't drain your energy is something I think that um, should also, what should mainly be the focus. I've recently found ways to suffer um, greatly, going to the gym, things like that. Um, the new job opportunity that I have, that I've acquired recently. Um, Other little tiny things that I see kind of popping up every now and then. Going out, being more social, things like that. There's little moments so where I kind of like go back into my, um, I go back into my malaise, and I kind of get back out of that champion energy. Um, I was thinking about it recently, like what kind of person you could call me. Um, I was thinking about the type of champions you have in the world, the ones who, you get people who they'll have this meteoric rise, and it'll start almost imminently from the moment of their conception, and they go from 0 to 100, exponential growth, off to infinity. And then you have people who had a rocky start, right? Rocky start, and it's more of a jagged up and down, up and down, up and down, and it goes slightly up and it goes slightly down, and you know, it's not really all that certain. It's almost like maybe the person has promised, but you're not really sure because you can't really determine where they're going to go. Maybe their ambitions are a little lacking. I think most of the men in the United States, in the Western world specifically, are within the frame of a lack of ambition. Their ambition has sadly become chasing women. And, you know, the astute eye goes, well, they need to focus on their goals and they need to become what they need to become. Um, so I would be inclined to agree with that men have to focus on the end goal. They have to focus on becoming, because that's the nature of being a man, is that you don't, you're not in the world with the value as is. So you have to become. Um, and plus, becoming will allow you to be, will allow you to give instead of needing attention and things like that, and needing, trying to go after your base needs. It's almost a way of finding greater depth in the midst of your lack of having, but then you're searching for a higher purpose, and that purpose becomes your almost maybe even a substitute for affection. But I don't think you can do that. I think it's I don't think there's anything wrong with admitting that you want a woman to hold, and you want to, maybe you want to have children and stuff like that, and you want to have a companion to have fun with, and you want someone who makes you feel happy, or you want someone who, that's the wrong frame. I don't want to put it in that, but you want someone who you can spend time with, who um, who complements your day, right? I think this is something that the American male is lacking in an extreme sense. Um, and there's an extreme um, lack um, of affection and attention and things like that. And one of the ways that our culture seeks to deal with it is by doubling down on our culture is doubling down on the idea that women are starting from a lack of, and that um, this position they're in is there's no strength, or that the men are um, oppressing them and whatnot. You know, um, so here's the couple of solutions I have, and these are things that I think are just the foundation for most men. So going to the gym, I've noticed since I've been in the gym, meeting new people has been a regular thing. And I didn't really try to meet them. It just kind of happened. Um, you meet people, maybe those people challenge you because they're in the same environment and they're also trying to grow. I think that is one of the main things that guys need is they need someone to stoke that flame inside of them. Most of society seems to be geared towards taking masculinity and draining what's left of it. Um, obviously we could say things like, "Oh, well, they're feminizing men" and stuff like that. That's kind of self-evident, especially when you look at the male population. Um, uh, I mean, if you really wanted to go into it, the older women, I noticed something with them. They'll go for these guys who are very soft, and they don't really they don't really have the same masculine energy as the men that they dated in their past. They're more controllable. They're not comfortable with men they can't control and stuff like that. And that's just in the dating arena, right? But even in the workplace, even um, in other sectors and other areas, um, that energy, the masculine bull energy, is not something that is it's not wanted outwardly. Um, One thing I'll say is it seems like also that I was talking to a lady at the mall, um, and she said that women seem to be attracted to guys, or seem to be only selecting guys who are feminine. And so, what's interesting is that what this means is that if you kind of see what's happening now and you extrapolate that over the next 10, 15 years, in the next 5 years, the guys who are going to be seen as the most attractive are going to be very feminine men. And the guys who are super masculine, they're going to be bred out by the women not wanting to be with them. And I kind of see it happening, sort of, right. You still have some exceptions like hybristophilia and stuff like that. How women um, will go towards guys who you know, are darker, guys who are dark triad. They have traits like psychopathy, sociopathy, narcissism, Machiavellian, and stuff like that. Anyways, um, I think it. So I talked about. I didn't talk about the solutions yet. So the body, I think, is one of the main solutions because if you can instill arousal in the women around you, if you can instill arousal in the partner, even if you're a chick, right? Because you have. So my friend, he was talking to a gal, and he didn't quite like her, but when I saw her, I was thinking, man, if she lost like 20 or 30 pounds, she wouldn't be all that bad to look at. Um, I think people, if we focus on our bodies and how our bodies look and try to make it better, I'm not saying, try to be perfect or try to look at people in the gym. And I know it's easy to look at someone in the gym and think, wow, this person is like so much better than me and stuff like that. I remember the last time I was in the gym looking at people with better physiques than me. But one thing I would say is you want to get to the point. You're not a bad person for feeling bad for that, but you want to get to the point where you can evolve past it and start seeing it as like motivation. You want to, or I mean, I don't want to tell you what you're gonna do. You can use it as motivation to move, see it as a goal, especially if you see a person with the physique you want to emulate. Uh, I don't know, strike up a conversation with them, admire it, let them know you like what they're doing, ask them what they do, stuff like that. Um, a lot of times they were in the same position you were in the past, and you giving them that feedback is kind of reminding them that they put in that work and they got the results. And you coming up and talking to them is kind of part of that realization. But I'm starting to think that the people who get really up there with the physique and looks and stuff like that, they're never really satisfied. But maybe some people are. I don't know. That's where I want to be. I want to get to the point where I'm satisfied with what, and I actually do like my physique. I like the slimness and stuff like that. But I'm I'm more trying to use it as a way to um, a couple of things, right? So I want to increase my sense of self worth. I want to increase my physical strength, just for the pride's sake as well. But then I also kind of want to use that as bait to get what I want. Um, Something else. I think uh, well, it also makes you healthy as well, right? So you have like your immune system and working out and also staving off the negative aspects of existence. Uh, so outside of the body thing, charity work. I know this might sound funny, but I think, and someone brought it up, and I almost laughed at it, but I think that would be good uh, for individuals who are in a position of loneliness, in a position where they are struggling in some sort of way. Um, Now, the charity work can act as a secondary system. Well, a couple of things, right? So it can kind of give you uh, a reason, a purpose, other than just thinking about things you don't have and stuff like that. Me as a guy, I'm always thinking about stuff I don't have, like money I don't have, cars I don't have, houses I don't have, stuff like that. Because a lot of times our existence is about uh, our utility, our ability to provide something for someone else. So it's hard when you have that mindset of being a utility for someone, it's hard. Sometimes you kind of forget about your own emotional needs, the internal depth that you have, because you're so busy trying to give a bunch of people things outside of yourself, outside of who you are and stuff. Man, I didn't want to make this long, and it's not very long. So I'm just going to read a little bit more from this whole article, see what I can draw from it. So, so it also goes into statistics on school stats and stuff. So let's see. So it talks about how young men, their self deletion rate is 4 times the rate of young women, and it says uh, that it says how talks about how it alludes to the statistics uh, on school events, um, saying that young men are disproportionately more responsible for mass tragedies and things like that. Societal changes began. I'm looking. Okay, it says scholars say the new era of gender parity has reshaped relationship dynamics. It's like obvious, right? It's like that's the annoying thing. It's like you have the one side of the population that relies on the other side uh, so that they can have a child for 9 months. And then you convince them that they should be equal, but then they don't see you as equals any longer. And then they just see you as superior. They just see themselves as superior to you when they're on par with you. It's kind of ironic in a way because you actually had philosophers kind of hinting at this, that whenever you give uh, the part of the population that depends on the other part of the population for safety and security, uh, equal, on par, things like that, they end up thinking they're more superior to you, and then you kind of just um, throw yourself out of the loop, like you're behind the 8 ball, right? But then when you're behind the 8 ball, you can't even get it back because you handed over the trophy. Uh, yeah, um, a weird situation we're in. I'll say that. Anyways, let's see. So the Hill article says women don't need to be in long-term relationships. They don't need to be married. They'd rather go to brunch with friends than have a horrible date. Um, I don't think it's about having a horrible date. I think that women's standards have gotten so high that it's like almost impossible to please a person with like extremely high standards. Um, for the most part, in the dating world at least, because people, we're not really, I don't think we're really capable of long-term relationships anymore, and it's partly to do with technology. And I won't go too far into it because I'm trying to keep this a little short because it's kind of late. Yes. It also alludes to how the pandemic uh, made pairing up a little bit difficult for the younger population. And here's some stats from the Pew Research Center. So 30% of U.S. adults are neither married, living with a partner, nor engaged in a committed relationship. Nearly half of young adults are single, 34% of women, and a whopping 63% of men. Um, that's nuts. Let's see. It says only half of single men are actively seeking relationships or even casual dates, according to Pew. That figure is declining. So here's some of the reasons it throws out for why this is happening. Fred Rabinowitz, a psychologist professor at University of Redlands, says you have to think that the pandemic had an impact on some of those numbers. Uh, Young men are watching a lot of social media. They're watching a lot of porn, prawn, corn, and I think they're getting a lot of their needs met without having to go out. And I think that's starting to be a habit. Um, Even seasoned researchers, I'm still reading from it, struggle to fully account for the relationship gap between the young men and women. If single young men outnumber single young women nearly 2 to 1, then who are all the young women dating? So the answer to that is pretty simple, and I'm surprised no one notices this. So the young women are actually going after the older guys because the older guys have all the wealth and status. And so the younger guys are just kind of starved out, basically. That's basically like 80% of the population, of the male population who are within the age of 18 all the way up to like, something reasonable, like 60 or something. Um, yeah, anyways. So I was just reading a bunch of information. So I'm gonna tell you what I actually think about all this stuff because I'm just saying, there's some channels where they try to sound all gung ho, like, "Oh yes, guys, we can be tough and we can solve this," and trying to have that masculine bravado. Um, I think there's a place for it. I'm not saying it's bad. It's not bad. It's a really, really bad situation that the West is in. Um, Now it's silent right now because the males want to appear strong and they don't want to just admit that things are really awful. And there's no real solution for it that's super obvious. Um, Obviously, if it keeps up, a lot of really bad stuff could end up happening. Um, I don't think people are really ready for it. Now I noticed something. A lot of females are kind of, they don't even recognize that this stuff is happening because they're kind of oversaturated with, like, they're super saturated with a whole lot of attention and super saturated with a lot of, like, their lives difficulties look different than men, so they can't even really fathom the male experience. Excuse me, but people in general, ever since the the cough has happened, um it's kind of affecting everybody. And we're kind of seeing the Latin effects on the male population. Uh, sure, it's had an effect on females. Um, I don't know the exact stats as to what effects it's had on them, but I know that as far as mental health, that has drastically declined for everyone, and I would say it's especially prominent in women as well. So again, back to what I really think about this. I don't think I don't think there will ever be a serious effort to assist um, the functionality of male existence in the West. I think this is partially why a lot of males are actually moving to different countries to to live in other countries because they're not really, we're like the we're not it's weird what the average idea of male existence has become, right? Because on one hand, I would say, okay, don't be a victim, just live life and become great and everything like that. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But um, the messages that are being thrown out to uh, the younger group of men would more than likely compel them to do things that aren't really in their best favor. Um, I also don't want to just get on the video and be like, this is bad. Oh my God, there's nothing we can do. Just, close your eyes and pretend it's not happening. It's kind of a silent thing that's happening, right? It's a silent dying, I would call it. No one really knows it's happening, but they're not paying attention because no one's going to say anything. None of the guys are going to say anything. They're just going to suffer in silence. For all the suffering that other groups have gone through in the past, especially women, I would say iteration of suffering that is being the current iteration of suffering is kind of this malaise caused by loneliness. It's not really going away. It's not. Um, there's no real solution for it. And another thing is, if you're a guy and you're alone, there's two things, right? You have a chance to focus on your purpose. You have a chance to do all of that stuff. Only issue is what I never hear in the manosphere, but never hear on YouTube, is that you're kind of functioning on a third of human. Uh, what would it be like? It'd be like driving a car with a V8 engine, but you're only using 3 or 4 of the cylinders, right? So male life essentially is just, at least nowadays, right, in the West, where things are kind of messed up. Male life is essentially existing with this creature that's trying to mimic you and act like you, but then you are like starved of like some of your needs. But then you also go out and, some guys act like victims and they think, oh, I can't do anything, I'm alone, I can't, there's nothing I can do to do this. They kind of like give up because they see the odds are stacked against them and they're like, you know what, this looks nuts, I'm going to crawl back into my room, I'm going to play video games, and I'm just going to resign from the Western society, the Western experiment. um, Part of that would be the lower work participation from males, uh, and the stats on that, which don't look all that good either. Um, me being a millennial, I could definitely speak to at least the malaise that I feel. It doesn't really, and hopefully I can wrap this up. I'll probably say more on this in the future and just wrap it up. But yeah, there's not really a lot that's being done about it, and there's not really you can do, at least immediately, without causing a whole bunch of riffraff. um, we've managed to do a couple of things by a lot of the social changes we've made. We've managed to increase the status of one group while simultaneously decreasing the status of another group and rendering them superfluous. Now, the effects on society that this is going to have, we don't even fully know yet. It hasn't fully been actualized. So, anyone who knows or can kind of is intelligent enough to see the effects, to see the patterns, so we're kind of just along for the ride to see where this whole little social experiment goes. Um, you know, um, yeah, as much startling growth as we've had as a society, I don't really see this. I don't really see this going. There's going to be a lot of bad things to happen, and it's also just from my experience and based off of um, what I've seen. It's going to become even more isolated, even just for the average person. Of course, people have their social media addictions, and they have their way to get cheap. They have their way to get cheap attention. Which, one thing I would say about social media is that yes, you're getting attention, and that makes individual attention less valuable. But the attention you're getting from social media is cheap. It's not real. You're just getting an illusion. It's almost like you're eating an imaginary meal that's being projected in front of you. Yes, it feels like you ate something and like it tastes good, and you can get it to the point where it actually feels like you're eating something that is actually has value. But your body knows it doesn't have a lot of value to you. Um, yep. So it's called. I'll probably do another video tomorrow or something like that. Just expanding on it. Uh, okay, so the reason why this issue is super important to me is because that's kind of where I'm at. I'm single right now and I'm going out and talking to people and trying to be social. But then I'm also realizing that I have to focus on my own self development and stuff like that. But then sometimes it feels like I'm operating off of uh, almost like I'm flying a plane with two engines. I'm flying on one engine and I'm trying to figure out how to start the I'm trying to figure out how what I can do to get the other engine to start. So that I can thrive and so that I can, reach a cruising altitude and actually just enjoy the flight. Um, so it's like I'm climbing out after landing and I'm trying to figure out how to get to cruising altitude. Of course, then you have landing the plane, but Anyways, all right. So this is the Iron Sun, and this video is called "Nobody Wants You Until Somebody Wants You." Um, I'll probably do a part two sometime soon.